It's Spooktober, boys. You know what that means. It's time to watch our favorite horror movies. The ones that make us scream, the ones that make us laugh, decorate our houses in the most elaborate decorations ever, just to replace them with Christmas decorations in November, and in my case, waste a ton of money on a new cosplay when I should be saving up for rent. I'm a cosplayer and a Warhammer player. I don't make good financial decisions. But it's also time to play some of my favorite horror games. And a game that I always come back to. I'm sure for most of you, this game needs no introduction. It's an incredibly popular horror game that spawned 2 sequels, a few spin-off games, 2 animated movies, and then EA killed it. And now they are coming back with a remake.
Don't fuck this up, Motive, I swear to God.
Wait, Motive. I've heard that name before. Oh god, no. No! Not these guys! But anyway, yeah, Dead Space is awesome. I can confidently say that it's my go-to horror game to play. Now, I do love Resident Evil. Hell, it's one of my all-time favorite franchises. But there's something really special about the Dead Space universe. The complete desperation of the universe and the incredibly deep lore behind the game is completely mesmerizing. The atmosphere is stellar, and the gameplay is incredibly fun, especially since this game came out at a time where suspense horror was transitioning into action horror. But the thing about Dead Space is that they were able to keep the horror in sync with the action, which is something a lot of other games in the genre struggled to do. I do love Resident Evil 4, and while there are undeniably terrifying moments, these motherfuckers live in my nightmares rent-free. This game is way more of a thrill ride compared to being a rookie cop in a zombie-infested police station. And while in Dead Space, you have access to some pretty powerful weapons, but they showcase your character's inexperience from the very beginning.
Isaac, it's me. I wish I could talk to you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about everything. I wish I could just talk to someone. It's all falling apart here. I can't believe what's happening. It's strange. Such a little thing.
How many times you watched that thing? Guess you really miss her.
The opening of this game is a slow, intense build-up. From the perspective of the characters, they have no clue what has happened to the USG Ishimura. All they really know is that something went wrong and they are sent to fix the situation. Our character is Isaac Clarke, engineer, PTSD world record holder, and former member of Stomp. This opening is great on so many levels because it introduces the characters and what they're doing through natural dialogue between Hammond and Kendra. It shows off the technology of this world through the rig and the visual designs of the suit. And it introduces our protagonist and his reason for venturing out into this exhibition, and shows that he has a more personal goal compared to everyone else. Starting off with Nicole's message is an excellent way to begin the game, because it's a simple but effective way to show that something went wrong. And to go back to the suit and rig, I mean, it goes without saying that the UI, or rather lack of UI in this game, was an absolute genius move by the developers. The most impressive thing to me is that they were able to make it work in both a gameplay and a story perspective. At first glance, it may seem a little artificial to have the health show up on the back of everybody, but when you look into the lore, it would make sense for something like this to exist in the future, especially for space mechanics and engineers that are working with dangerous machinery that can do this. Hey Folly, you okay over there? It's also a great way to have players more invested in the game world and pay more attention to what they're looking at, especially in the dark corridors. Isaac's helmet and rig is constantly glowing, a welcome contrast to the desolate and dark atmosphere. So the shuttle crashes, because of fucking course it does, it's sci-fi horror after all, and taking the only means of escape out of the picture. So once you and your squad are all set up and ready to go check out the docking bay, you see no one. And no one is in the waiting room either. Then the lights go out, and then there's something else in the room, and Wow, he is fucking big. There's a lot that Dead Space is known for. One of the biggest one is the Necromorphs. These are by far some of the most terrifying creatures that have ever graced my eyes. If and when we ever discover aliens, I hope they look like this, or this, but knowing our luck, they're probably gonna end up looking like this, or this. This is by far one of my favorite monster reveals in games. It's all experienced through gameplay. Isaac is fully playable throughout the entire experience, so when you see this guy get ripped to shreds behind the glass, the sense of fear and urgency is felt to the player as they're responsible in a way for how Isaac reacts. And I hope you're ready to run because there's more of them right behind you. It also shows a high level of vulnerability to the player because these two guys had rifles. You better fucking run from these things. Side note, Isaac is really lucky that elevators in the future just fucking crush people. If this was in modern day, the door would have just opened up and the Necromorph would have just fucking killed him. After catching your breath and now fully convinced at the fucked situation that you're in, you are now able to fully appreciate the atmosphere of this game. Hey man, are you okay? Bodies across the ground, messages written in blood on the walls and floor, audio and text logs documenting the events before and during the Necromorph invasion. It combines so well into each other. Now, text logs are no stranger to horror games, as they were most prominent in games like Resident Evil 4 and Amnesia: The Dark Descent, which was heavy inspirations for this game. But in most cases, these logs were expositions on villain motivations or on a specific virus. In Dead Space, the combination of both text and audio logs make a spicy variety. People reasonably freaking out about the situation, trying to figure out how it happened, arguing with each other about what to do. These little stories build up on the mass epidemic that befell this ship. And the writing on the wall even has some pretty good advice to give. Cut the limbs. Right off the bat, the game is letting the environment teach the player instead of outright telling them. Is what I would say if Hammond didn't call you 10 seconds after to tell you the exact same fucking thing. Yes, like, no, cut the fucking limbs! But minor complaints aside, seeing the constant message "cut the limbs" in blood all over the ship is an expert way to show the desperation of the inhabitants of the Ishimura. It shows the decaying sanity of these poor souls as they were slowly cut down by these monsters. And then you get the plasma cutter, which I think I can say is next to the Halo CE pistol with most satisfying guns in games. This little thing is your best fucking friend. And let me tell you, upgrade it as much as you can. She will keep you safe from these fuckers. Hell, when I play the game now, I rarely use other weapons. The only thing I might use is the line gun because it makes the baby fuckers a little easier. Oh, and speaking of filicide, look at these fuckers! They're fucking horrifying! They pulled no punches when it came to the violence on display. There is some fucked up shit that you will find in this game. And the creativity and the design of both the Necromorphs and the environment is just so incredible. From the typical slashers with their long, spiked limbs, the agile leapers with their 2 arms and unnerving tail, to the long, lanky dividers that tower over Isaac. The designs were inspired by existing aliens and monsters in other media. It's pretty easy to see the xenomorph inspiration from this game mixed with the creatures from Resident Evil. But they combine the inspiration in such a way that makes them stand out. Just the level of detail on their ripped skin and flesh, and the incredibly violent nature of these monsters with their just loud and bombastic screams. They make sure you remember them. And if things weren't bad enough, there are other conflicts that Isaac will go through as well. One of which are the Unitologists. Now, they aren't as present in this game as they are in future installments, but a prominent member, Dr. Callus Mercer, is a constant foil to your escape in this game. For those of you who don't know, the Unitologists are a religion in Dead Space universe that believe the time of humanity is over and we should give ourselves to our new necromorph gods and get devoured and made into giant flesh monsters.
Yeah, that.
Naturally, religious zealots ruin everything just like every other sci-fi media. and fantasy media now that I think about it. Another major foil in Dead Space is the markers, the main MacGuffin of this series. Think like the Bailet from Berserk combined with the Hell Relics in Doom. They're nothing but bad news, but they're an incredible source of energy, which is what humanity desperately needs. And they're so desperate, in fact, that they are willing to get bored by terrifying corpse monsters to get it. I know I keep on talking about how terrifying the necromorphs are, but can you fucking blame me? But something else the markers do, on top of charging your phone really fast and spawning demon babies in test tubes, it can also create illusions in the minds of people. It wants to manipulate, and that's exactly what happens to Isaac. Remember how I came here to find this boo, Nicole? Well, the marker recognizes this and uses it against him, using Nicole's image to get Isaac to do its bidding. So not only are the monsters something to worry about, but also Isaac's mind and sanity. But going back to my original point, something that this game is really good at is balancing action and horror in a way that makes it work. It's both fun and terrifying. The gameplay cycle is incredibly fun with a large variety of weapons that are all fun to use and abilities that spice up the gameplay, like Stasis and Kinesis. Stasis is your best friend. This shit comes in handy so much, especially on the harder difficulties where these fuckers are everywhere. There's also Kinesis that mainly allows you to push and pull objects, but you can also throw stuff at enemies. Now, admittedly, this doesn't have that much effect on them, but it's nice to have regardless. They're able to keep the action fun while not losing grip of the horror. An issue a lot of horror games run into is that they'll lean a little too heavily on the action side of the game, and it doesn't get scary. Dead Space's loud and bombastic tone is exactly what makes it scary. It's constantly throwing punches at you in new and creative ways. It's unrelenting and on you to fight back. As for the remake, I really hope they don't fuck it up. From what they've shown so far, it looks pretty good. They got Gunnar Wright to play Isaac again. They have this cool technology with him reacting in different ways depending on his condition, and they revamped the zero-G areas to work the same way they do in Dead Space 2, so the game looks promising. I mean, yeah, it's another remake / remaster in a market that is constantly exploiting our nostalgia for money, but what else is new? But even if the remake isn't good, we'll still have the original, and I will return to it for years to come. And I highly recommend anyone who hasn't played the first Dead Space to give it a try. And
Make us whole again.
is Malenia the Blade of... What's your favorite 40k book so far? Right now, it's The Twice Dead King. I'm a big Necrons fan, and I'm pretty biased when it comes down to it, but it is by far some of the best storytelling that I have seen from the 40k universe. I do also recommend Betrayer. It's a Horus Heresy book, and it's the only one I've read so far, but that one is also really good.